Coming up now on Animal Outtakes, my goodness, are they huge! Everywhere you look, you'll spot a new animal. We're taking a trip, a road trip that is, to a park that puts you into its animal habitats.
Those two both came from a lab in northern New York many, many years ago.
So they were saved.
They were saved and brought here to Lion Country Safari.
And she's at it again. Our Inspector Planet is testing the common belief that these creatures actually have eyes in the back of their head. This and much more is straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. Can you imagine being surrounded by rhinos and giraffes and even wildebeest? I know what you're thinking. That could happen if you're on an African safari. It could. Or you could hop in your car and drive through one of these animal habitats at Lion Country Safari. When you enter Lion Country Safari, it's as if you are actually the one on display, driving into 300 acres of animal habitat. Looking out your car window, you can't help but see something amazing. The first animal to greet us was this 94-year-old tortoise named Lance.
It's estimated that they can live up to 200 years.
So he's middle-aged.
Yeah, he's got a lot of years left in him.
Yes, he does. Lion Country Safari opened more than 50 years ago and was the first cageless zoo in the country. To this day, the park prides itself as being a leader in conservation, giving the more than 1,000 animals here a natural open environment, allowing the animals to act as if they were in the wild.
All right, this is probably good right here.
Wildlife Director Brian Dowling had us hop into the back of a truck to watch the feeding of some of the white rhinos.
They'll be here in a moment.
Oh, they're coming.
They're gonna, when they come over here, they're gonna eat the alfalfa up first, and then we'll throw out a little bit of grain. You'll probably see a little bit of aggression amongst the zebras. Zebras are they're pretty rough and tough animals. That's kind of how they sort out their politics in the group is through aggression. And the rhinos are really a terrific animal to work with. They're very intelligent. They're very social creatures. They're very tactile also. So you always see them, like when they're laying down touching each other, rubbing up against each other. They're really an amazing animal. They are one of my favorite animals to work with.
And
here.
so prehistoric.
Really the success of the rhino program that we have is really that relationship that the keepers have with the rhinos.
What do you think, Shannon? Hi, baby.
What's up?
Hi. I'm thinking, my goodness, are they huge?
They're right around 4,000 pounds.
Yeah.
They're poached for the horn. You know, some cultures think that has some magical medicinal value, which it's really just keratin. It's just like compressed hair. To be perfectly honest with you, it's kind of gross. So here's the horn, so you can feel how bristly that is right there.
Hi. Yeah. The safari's open space, the mild Florida temperatures, and the care and dedication from keepers are some of the reasons Dowling believes the conservation programs are successful. More than 30 white rhinos have been born here.
Because we display our animals in these large social groups, and a large crash of rhino or a large herd of zebra or black buck, and that brings out a lot of their natural behaviors that you wouldn't typically see unless you were observing them in the wild.
I actually, and it's hard to talk about this without getting emotional, but one time I saw a kid say they saw a giraffe. They started sobbing. She said, "Mommy, I thought giraffe weren't real." So I think it is incredibly important to get out, to see that these animals are alive, and that's the way that you can connect to them in a really real sense and care about them in the wild and care about the planet and care about what you can do as an individual person to take better care of the planet and make sure that these guys have homes.
Our trip isn't over just yet. Later in the show, we will check out the chimpanzees' habitats, designed especially for these endangered animals. Next, our Inspector Planet is searching for clues. Does this animal actually have eyes in the back of its head? Every dog deserves a lifelong loving home. Dante's Den provides a pristine, comfortable haven for dogs that have been abandoned or surrendered by their owners. We ensure that every pup in our Joyful Dogs adoption program receives lots of love and attention, is properly immunized, spayed or neutered, and is in good health. Prospective pet parents undergo a thorough adoption review to ensure a lifetime of love and care. Find your new furry best friend at Dante's Den. For more information, go to dantesden.org or call 844-DANTES-DEN. Dante's Den, continuing the love. Science is everywhere, and it's all around us. It's observing the world, forming questions, and the willingness to find the answers. It's something our Inspector Planet does every day, and you can too.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tracy Fanara. I'm an environmental engineer, which means that I use different scientific disciplines to protect the environment, humans, and wildlife. At Mote Marine Laboratory, I answer questions with investigation and myth busting.
Oh, this is a good one.
Marcia, 2 fingers.
How did you see me? Do you have eyes in the back of your head?
I wish I did. I think there's a species that does.
Really?
Let's go check it out.
Okay.
There they are. Do you see them? These are called cuttlefish. They kind of remind me of aliens, how they can hover in the water with ease. And come to think of it, they have some characteristics that are out of this world.
Yeah, these guys are fascinating. They've been around on planet Earth for millions of years, and we still know very little about how they actually function. Even though they change color, they don't see in color. They still see in grayscale. So right now we're trying to figure out why and how they change color, even though they can't perceive color in their brain.
It's super interesting.
Absolutely. Actually, the Department of Defense would like to figure this out too.
I'm sure.
They want to put it on drones.
And people are talking about actually making clothes like that. They can not only change color, but also texture.
Absolutely, yeah. Why not? It'd be a lot of fun.
Right.
These guys are like mood rings, so you can kind of tell what kind of behavior they're having based on the color. If humans had that, it'd be a very interesting world.
That's really cool.
Like its relative, the octopus, a cuttlefish is an interesting and intelligent mollusk. Cuttlefish are social and have a distinct way that they communicate.
I see that their bodies keep on changing colors.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
How do they do that?
They have a few specialized cells in their body. The main one is called chromatophores. That gives them the ability to change color. Then they also have rhinoceros and leucophores, and that gives them the ability to their body is dancing. It's called strobing. And they're actually like a prism. They're actually bending light with their skin.
Wow, so we can use these for like discos.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire it up, disco ball.
Awesome. So I've heard that not only do they change color, but they can actually change the texture of their skin.
Yes, they sure can, for various reasons. One is for camouflage, another one is communication between themselves. When they're in mating mode, all that texture and coloration means something to the animals. When they're mating, this species coloration and the male dominant coloration is black with white dots. When they're feeling a little bit submissive, or threatened, they'll turn white with black rings around the eyes. So every time we get a new species in to work with here at Moat, we have to figure out a new language, basically, what they're trying to tell us and tell each other. But also the ability to camouflage really well with their texture in their arms. You can see one right now hanging out in some coral, trying to fake being coral so no one bothers them.
That's so cool. Yeah, they have to be really sneaky because other animals can actually hear them because they have 3 eyes.
And they have other defenses too, other than we all know squids have ink, they have ink too. So when they get really, really threatened by an animal, they'll ink and run away in a very high fashion.
Is it toxic?
It is not toxic.
So these guys are great predators. They can camouflage, color, texture, and they can even mimic things around them. The question is, can they actually see in the back of their head?
And the answer to that question is basically yes. They have a specialized pupil that's W-shaped, and that allows them to get light energy from multiple angles. Instead of our eyeballs, we only get light from one angle, they get multiple angles, and it's rudimentary light they can see in the back of their heads.
I think we need to test this one out.
We can do that, absolutely, with a feeding demonstration with some frozen shrimp, absolutely.
Let's do it.
Brian put his shrimp on the end of a feeding stick and places it behind a cuttlefish. And watch. It's just like having eyes in the back of their heads. They can spot it.
Their specialized pupils allow them to get light energy from multiple angles, so it's almost like they have side view mirrors on their body.
Side view mirrors, kind of like a car.
Kind of a car, yeah, absolutely.
2 fingers. I see you.
You do have eyes in the back of your head. You're just like a cuttlefish. You cheat.
Remember guys, anyone could be a scientist or an engineer with some passion, hard work, and curiosity of how the world works.
Coming up next, we're back at Lion Country Safari, this time to meet some of the primate residents.
Over 90% of the seafood that is coming in to this country is raised in areas of the world that don't have the highest standards. And so our approaches are aimed for 2 things. One is to help feed the world. The second is to do it in an environmentally friendly and sustainable way.
We have been to many sanctuaries and zoos over 6 seasons of Animal Outtakes, and we have seen many animal enclosures. But I have to tell you, the habitat for their chimpanzees is like no other we have seen before. Dr. Tina, we're here on one of the many islands that you have for these gorgeous creatures that we want to hug and we want to kiss, but we know better.
That is not a good idea, Marcia. No.
Tell us about the chimps here.
Okay, we have 16 chimpanzees here at Lion Country Safari. The oldest are Melody and Swing. They're about 50 years old at this point. Melody has diabetes and a little bit of hypertension, so chimpanzees are very much like us. They can have very similar ailments that we do, and we treat them in many of the same ways. We have two groups here. We have behind us here is Bamboo's group, and over here is Higgy's group. And each of those groups are named after their alphas. So alpha here is Bamboo and Higgy. And both of them are fantastic at basically just mitigating conflict between other group members. That's their job. They take their jobs very seriously, and they do a good job at it. So,
is there a lot of feuding between them?
Between the two groups? Yeah, they can be very territorial, so we have to keep them separate at all times. If we do ever need to move a group member into an existing group, it's a slow, very well thought out process where we involve all sorts of people here, from the keepers to myself to the animal curator and the general curator. We all sort of form a plan, as well as hospital staff, to make sure that we're going to go about it the best possible way.
Now, where did these come from?
It depends. A lot of them were born here at Lion Country Safari. Some of them, like Swing and Cooper. Swing is in Bamboo's group. Don't see her right now. Cooper's in Higgy's group. Those two both came from a lab in northern New York many, many years ago.
So they were saved.
They were saved and brought here to Lion Country Safari. And quite a few ex-pets here, because as you said, they're adorable when they're babies. You want to hug them, you want to love them, you want to snuggle them, and then they get big, and they grow up, and they have really big teeth, and they're very strong. I love to talk about Cooper's story. He was from the laboratory many, many years ago. He was used in hepatitis research, and so to me, he gave a lot so that we have access to vaccines and medical care. And so to me, I like to honor him by using the access to the medical care that we have and vaccines, and he saved a lot of lives.
But now you have saved his.
Yes, well, we like to think so. He deserves it.
Okay, here we go.
That's just a friendly behavior.
Is that a friendly little
That's friendly.
dance?
Yep, they're excited. They know that they're next, and so they're telling each other, "It's food time!" Yeah, come here! And they get so excited they want to hug about it, basically.
Now they have the bottles, and obviously they're getting something out of the bottles. What do they do with the bottles?
They just leave them on the island. A lot of times, actually, they will take them, fill them with water when they go to bed, and we'll find them the next day next to their nests with a half-full water bottle.
The glass of water on the nightstand.
That is exactly what they'll do. And then the keepers always go to the island, they clean it, they prep it for the next group of chimpanzees coming on, and we're very careful to separate their plastic bottles from the other waste, and we recycle those plastic bottles.
Now, you've mentioned the different islands, and we can see that here. And I presume, correctly, that you close this bridge here, and that's how they start moving into the other areas?
That's exactly it. So this group, for instance, will move to the island that's in the background there. That's Island 3.
Okay.
And tomorrow, the chimp keepers in the morning will go on. It's already clean, but if it wasn't, they would clean it.
Okay.
Make sure that there's enough bedding. They scatter their food around because we want them to have to forage for their food, much like they would in the wild.
Okay.
They put out various enrichments to keep them mentally stimulated, which they already are very mentally stimulated. We have large groups of chimpanzees here, which is really the most stimulation you can give the chimps. But we want to do as much as we can, so we give them additional enrichment. And then the chimps know that their food is over there and all of their enrichment, and they're excited to move. And so when we open the bridge, we give them the opportunity. They willingly cross, and then we close the bridge behind them, and that new island is open.
Why is this important?
Well, it simulates natural behaviors as much as you can in a human care environment. So in the wild, chimpanzees would be moving to, they have their core home range. So they don't really leave that because there's other groups of chimpanzees outside of that home range that they don't want to come into contact with, because then it would be a fight. But they have their home range and they move within that home range every day. They don't stay in one place. So we basically have simulated that here. All of the islands are the home range, and each individual island is the core range for the day. So it's a very natural system, really.
And the average life expectancy out here is?
Out here, it's remarkable, yes. Much longer lived in human care than they are in the wild. For instance, Higgy is still alpha of his group. He's the big guy there on that barge. He's 45 years old, and in the wild, he would very likely no longer be around. Chimpanzee males are pretty old by the time they're 30, and females as well. You're lucky if you see a female chimpanzee in the wild that's 40 to 50 years old. And as I said, we have Melody, Jen, Swing. We have quite a few 50-year-olds here. And we just recently lost little Mama, who was she was a world famous chimpanzee. She was the oldest living chimpanzee We lost her about a year ago, and we still very, very much miss her. But she was estimated to be in her mid to late 70s when she passed. I love to view these guys as ambassadors for their species in the wild, and I hope people view them and say, wow, they're really cool, they're really individuals, and they're really complex, and they have great family relationships, and they deserve to be conserved in their wild spaces. And so I hope that they come here, they get to enjoy our much beloved chimpanzees, and then they care about conservation of chimpanzees in the wild after they've got to know these guys.
We have heard how closely related humans are to the great apes, especially when it comes to our DNA. Scientists believe our evolutionary tree has great apes in it. We are not just related to great apes, but we are one. Stay with us. There's more Animal Outtakes after this. Every dog deserves a lifelong loving home. Dante's Den provides a pristine, comfortable haven for dogs that have been abandoned or surrendered by their owners. Every pup in our Joyful Dogs adoption program receives lots of love and attention, is properly immunized, spayed or neutered, and is in good health. Find your new furry best friend at Dante's Den. For more information, go to dantesden.org or call 844-DANTES-DEN. Dr. Glassman is not only our resident veterinarian for Animal Outtakes, he's also a very, very dear friend and takes care of my dogs completely. And there isn't a week that goes by that I'm not on the phone saying, Lucci has diarrhea and Noah's vomiting and Santo's doing both. Why?
Well, look up the causes of, let's start with just vomiting. Look up the causes on the internet. I'd be surprised if you found less than a couple dozen. And obviously can be very simple. They could have eaten too fast, which I would call gorging, and all pets do that once in a while. They just eat their food so fast, they just bring it right back up in 5 minutes. And if it's just an isolated thing, I don't worry about that. And in general, let me say, if your pet is happy and active and, being normal, isolated vomiting and isolated episode of diarrhea isn't usually significant if they're happy and active. We all have upset stomachs once in a while. It doesn't often mean much. Certainly if it keeps going, progresses, it can be very, very serious. Things as bad as cancer can, cause that. But so I want to talk sort of about simple vomiting, simple diarrhea with no really significant causes behind it. So your pet vomits, let's say, twice today. Could be, did they eat a plant? I was asked, is there maybe a new plant in the house? Did it get in any chemicals? Did it eat a mushroom in the yard? So look for some simple causes that your pet might have eaten something unusual, just that physically irritated the stomach. And if their stomach's upset, one of the first things you should do is just maybe not feed them for 6 or 8 hours, and then feed them a bland diet. And then for dogs, I usually recommend maybe 75-80% rice or pasta, and maybe 20-25% boiled chicken or turkey is good. You take most of the fat off because fat's hard to digest, and maybe do, again, 75-80% bland and just maybe 20% of the fatless meat. And small frequent meals also. If you have an upset stomach, you eat small frequent meals for maybe a day or two. But again, if they're happy, active, not lethargic, I don't get too concerned. Same thing with an episode of diarrhea. If it's not like explosive and watery, loaded with blood, fresh red blood, or lots of mucus, that can be more serious. Or if it's black and tarry, that means it's a high up lead and it's digesting blood and it comes out tarry. That could be certainly much more serious. But parasites, ingesting foreign objects, irritants, so many things cause it. But if your pet's happy and active, I don't get too concerned about it.
In the morning, my Lucci, who is my giant schnauzer, as you know, many times he gets up in the morning, he throws up. It's bile. It's either a light yellow or it's clear. He, of course, walks away from it, and he's perfectly fine. But I've noticed that a lot of dogs do this in the morning. Is it because they have too much acid in the
Yeah,
system?
it may very well be. Actually, hiatal hernias, I learned this many, many years ago at a seminar. My own cat used to do that, and it evidently may have had a hiatal hernia, and I gave it some Zantac way back. When it first came on the market, it was a great drug 20-some years ago, and that worked, the Zantac at night. But of course, check with your vet. But you can also do that if you have a dosage from your veterinarian, a one-time Zantac or
Tagamet, you've recommended Tagamet.
Tagamet, that's one of the original drugs.
Yes.
Xantac's maybe a little better. I forget if it's Prilosec or Pepsid. Oh, it's Pepsid. Pepsid's the other common over-the-counter one. So one time, if you have a dose from your veterinarian to do for vomiting, can't hurt. They're incredibly safe drugs. But if you have a consistent every morning thing, actually, we should maybe try some Zantac at night for your dog and see it, because it worked like dramatically for my cat years ago.
Now, you said an old wives' tale was to give them some crackers at night, and it won't happen in the morning. You were right.
We'll
So
see.
have some crackers ready and some Pepsid and Tagamet, and they'll do just fine. We hope you had fun and learned a thing or two along the way. We'll be back here again next week with even more animals and some wild adventures. Until then, thanks for watching. Watch Animal Out. Next, our Inspector Planet is searching for clues. Does this mollusks, this is not good. You got it spelled wrong.
That's how it's spelled.
It's M-O-L-L-A-S-K, isn't it? Mullets. I'm going to have trouble with that one. Does this mullets? Mullets. Okay, all right. Next, our Inspector Planet is searching for clues. Does this mullets actually have eyes in the... Could you get another word? Mollusc. This animal. That's good. Okay.